Most people think water is harmless once the lights are on. Swimming pools, fountains, quiet ponds in public parks, places built for comfort and recreation. In Europe and America, they are part of ordinary life. Kids take lessons there, athletes train there, friends laugh and splash and forget how deep the water actually is. But water has a strange habit of changing once everyone leaves. I learned that during a summer job at a large community sports complex just outside the city. The place had a gym, a cafe, and a long indoor swimming pool used by families during the day and training teams in the evening. By daytime, it felt cheerful and noisy. Children shouted, lifeguards blew whistles, and sunlight poured through the tall windows, turning the water bright blue. But after closing time, everything changed. The building became hollow, the sounds echoed longer, and the pool stopped looking friendly. Without the bright lights and movement, the water turned dark and still, like a sheet of glass hiding something beneath it. My job was simple: lock doors, check the locker rooms, and make sure no one remained inside before the security system turned on. Most nights I finished quickly and left without thinking twice. Until the night I heard the splash. It was late, close to midnight. The last swimmers had left nearly an hour earlier. I was walking past the pool hall when I heard it. A sudden heavy splash in the deep end. Not a small ripple, not a filter starting. A real splash. The kind made when someone falls into water. I stopped in the doorway. The pool hall was empty. The water in the deep end was still moving, wide ripples spreading slowly across the surface, touching the lane ropes, bouncing off the tiled walls. I waited. If someone had fallen in, they would surface within seconds. But nothing came up. The ripples slowly faded until the water became perfectly still again. I told myself it was the filter system starting up, even though I had worked there long enough to know that wasn't how the filter sounded. Still, I finished my shift and went home. But after that night, strange things began happening. One evening, I walked past the locker rooms and heard water dripping inside, slow, steady, patient. When I opened the door, the room was empty, lockers closed, benches dry, except for the floor. A line of wet footprints crossed the tiles, bare footprints. They started near the shower area and moved toward the exit where I stood. Each one was fresh, shining under the dim lights. I stared at them, waiting for the obvious explanation to appear. But the footprints stopped halfway across the room, not turned, not faded, stopped, as if whoever made them had simply vanished. I left the room quickly that night. After that, I began noticing things I hadn't before. Towels that felt damp, though they hadn't been used. Lockers found open in the morning after being locked at night. And sometimes, late in the evening, the faint sound of breathing coming from the direction of the pool. One of the older employees noticed how uneasy I had become. She had worked there for years, long before I arrived. One night, she quietly said something that made my stomach turn cold. "If you ever hear someone calling from the water," she said, "don't answer." I laughed nervously and asked why. She didn't laugh. She only said, "Some things that enter water never really leave it." I tried to forget that conversation, but a few nights later, I heard my name. I was alone in the building finishing the final checks. The lights were dim, and the air inside felt heavy with humidity. As I walked past the pool hall, I heard it, my name, soft, wet somehow. I froze. The voice came again, barely above a whisper. It sounded like someone speaking while their mouth was full of water. Against my better judgment, I stepped into the pool hall. The water was calm. The lights reflected off the surface in long, trembling lines. For a moment, nothing moved. Then I noticed the ladder at the deep end. Two pale hands were gripping the metal rails. Only the hands. The rest of the body remained beneath the water. My heart stopped. The fingers tightened slowly around the rails, and the shape beneath the surface rose just enough for me to see a face floating below the water. The eyes were open, staring directly at me. Then the mouth moved. The voice reached me through the water. "Don't leave!" The words sounded distorted, like something trying to remember how human speech worked. The head slowly lifted higher, hair drifting around it like dark weeds. And then the thing smiled. Not friendly, not angry, just patient, as if it had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally look back at it. That was the moment I ran. Behind me, I heard water spilling over the edge of the pool, slow at first, then faster, followed by the terrible sound of something wet sliding across the tiles. I didn't turn around. I burst through the emergency exit and ran across the parking lot until I reached my car. When I finally looked back, the building stood silent, dark, still, as if nothing had happened. I quit the job the next day. No one asked many questions, but sometimes, late at night, when everything around me is quiet, I hear a faint dripping somewhere nearby, slow, steady, and every now and then, I think I hear a voice in the darkness, softly calling my name, the way it did that night, waiting, patient, hoping that one day I might answer.